Hello, career thought leaders. It's good to talk to you today. And we are going to be talking about the now, the new, and the next in interviewing. So, we have been talking about interviewing for the last few weeks. And today we're going to talk about one psychological concept that can really help your clients stand out, and a second concept that I learned in the sales world, but it's really just good communication, has nothing to do with sales. And we're going to talk about that as well. So if you're joining me today, drop a note in the chat. Tell me where you're joining from. If you're watching the replay, drop that note in the chat as well and let me know that you're watching the replay. And what do we want to know about interviewing to really show up in a way that we connect with the people on the other side? So we've been talking about this a little bit just in terms of how do you connect with the interviewers? That's really why you're there, not necessarily to show that you're qualified. They already read your resume. They know you're qualified. In the interview, they may be checking to see if that is real, how deep it is, some of those things, but they're really not expecting you to wow them with your qualifications. They're expecting to connect with them about what it is that they want to know. And that is, are you a good fit for the business? Are you a good fit to work with? Do I want to work with you all day? If we have to go on a business trip, do I want to travel with you? All of those things are what we're looking for when we're in an interview. Hello. See some more of you have joined, so feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining us from. I look forward to saying hello, and then I'm excited to just talk today about what's going on in the world of interviewing and how we can help people connect with their interviewers. Okay, awesome. And now I can see your comments too. Hi, Diane. Hi, Norma. Good to see you today. Glad that you're joining us. Facebook has recently made a change that you're not able to actually see this in our Facebook group anymore, which is kind of a bummer. But you're still on our Facebook page if you are in our Facebook page. And I think the other way that I can do this, and I'm just going to try this because why not? Might as well, right? Let's see if I can do this. I'm not sure I can. No. Okay. I was going to try to see if I could share the video into a group. So this is kind of the workaround. We're going to try this out and see if it works. Hang on. Then we're going to dive in to the interviewing piece of it. Okay. We'll try that. Excellent. So when we think about interviewing, a lot of times we forget that it is about that connection and is about kind of getting people to like us, but not in a fakey, I'm going to try to manipulate you or be something I'm not, because that doesn't work. Talking about going into a long-term relationship here, and it's not going to work to do it from a falsehood standpoint. But we do want to be likable in terms of that we want to show up with the intention to get to know the other people on this other side and see if we like each other. So this is the two concepts that we're going to talk about today. Really dig into that. And they're both about moderation. So the first concept, especially that I'm going to talk about, can be taken too far and become manipulation. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about doing this from a good-hearted place and from that intention of wanting to connect and be a good communicator. So keep that in mind. Hi, Trish. It's good to see you. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for joining us from North Carolina. Excellent. First concept is called mirroring. And psychological mirroring is interesting. Again, when you go and read about mirroring, it's the way that we communicate and that we kind of unconsciously, subconsciously mirror the communication that we see from other people. Now, the psychological research goes into the manipulation piece. We're not going to go there. What I'm talking about with mirroring is seeing how you can better communicate with the people on the other side. And it has a few specific ways that we can dig into it. One is I can mirror somebody's talking pace. So pace is important. Typically when we are in an interview, we tend to talk too fast, but I want to pay attention to the pace of the other people that are talking to me. They probably do some kind of introduction before they even ask me a question. And I'm going to be clued in on, are they a fast talker? Are they slower? What does that look like? Because here's what we know is if they talk really fast and we talk really slow, there's this clash and it feels like we're not a good fit. If they're talking really slow and we talk too fast, same thing. Now, this is a small thing. It's not like I'm inauthentic because I'm slowing myself down a little bit, or maybe even speeding it up just a little bit if I notice that the person on the other end is a faster talker. Hopefully, I'm prepared enough with my content, which is really where our ability to do some of these other things comes out of, is that we've got to be prepared with our content. And then I can say, okay, these people are slower. So I'm going to really, be a little bit more thoughtful with my words. Talked about this last week, how one of the ways you can slow yourself down is to make sure you finish every word with that, usually a consonant at the end. So I can do that, or I can pick up the pace. So that's one way that we can mirror. The next way is volume. So if someone on the other end is really soft, I might tone it down just a little bit. I don't want to go too far on that one because it can mean I'm hard to hear. If the other person is really loud, I might speak up just a little bit to make sure that I'm sort of matching that. So I've got pace, I've got volume. And the other thing that I can kind of mirror is their body language. So what's going on with them? How can we do that piece of it once we're in there? There's a few other things that we can mirror that we have to prepare for before we go in. And these are some that we've been talking about for a while, but just in a different way. So appearance. I really want to mirror my appearance. I want to do my research. I can look on their website, their Facebook pages, their, even their LinkedIn pages, and just see what kinds of events do they have? How are people dressed? Hopefully I can maybe talk to someone or meet someone who works there. Can even ask the recruiter or the person who's scheduling the interview, what is the dress code like for this? Just want to have some idea of how to somewhat mirror that dress. Now, I recommend, and I'd love to hear what those of you who are watching say, but I recommend people take it kind of a one step up. So if everybody's wearing shirts and shorts, you probably want to wear, at least a button-down shirt and some nicer pants. But if you take it too far and wear a suit, it just doesn't match, right? It's a clash. So you're looking at that opportunity to mirror even with the clothing, and that's the psychological construct behind it. So you mirror in your preparation and even in your stories. So when you're thinking about what does my company really think about? What do they care about? What kinds of topics are they talking about? Am I interviewing with engineers or with HR people? All of those knowledge pieces can then help me better tailor what I'm talking about so that it's matching what the other person cares about. And that's not about inauthenticity. It's about communication and connection. And I'm still going to show up as who I am. They're still going to be my stories. But the way in which I tell them and the pieces that I choose to tell, and even some of the language that I use, can all be thoughtfully chosen so that it makes sense and connects and engages the person on the other side. When we don't do that piece, we can feel like we didn't prepare. We can feel like we're not a good fit. Can just feel like we're coming kind of out of third base or whatever you want to say, that it just doesn't make sense. And even that, I used a metaphor or simile, whatever they are. You want to think about that as well when you're communing and talking and using your stories. I've been more aware of that recently because I've used some, colloquial type phrases, and my 7-year-old will go, well, what does that mean? Because they're not aware, and that can feel very alienating to the other person that you're talking about, and you don't want that in an interview. So you're putting all of this together in your preparation so that then when you step in, you've got those tools in your back pocket. Now, it's interesting. There are a few tools that we can use when we're interviewing. Yoodli is one of them that we use, YOODLI. I know that many of you on the call are familiar with that because they have been a friend of Career Thought Leaders for a while. And they will actually tell you when you've used non-inclusive language. So if I say guys, yes, that's a common phrase, but it's also very not inclusive. And especially if I'm interviewing with a panel full of women, it's going to not even really consciously, but feel weird to them that that's the language that I'm using, whether I'm a male or a female. So those types of phrases, it can help us think about, which I love. And if we're thinking about what is the language I want to use as I'm going into it, we can catch some of that for ourselves. So we're going to have a presentation by Gina Riley tomorrow talking about some of these issues. And she's taking some of the research from presence and executive presence and weaving it into a session for us on how does that apply in the interview. So I'm going to drop that in the chat if you haven't registered yet and you're interested. We'd love to have you join us. That is open to any career services provider. You're welcome to join us for that session and really think about how do we help our clients have better presence. And a lot of that is about these communication skills. So we've talked about the mirroring both in our preparation, our appearance, and then our presence. Once we're there, how do we match those pieces and show up in a way that is aligned with that? It's still also aligned with you. It's not an either or situation, right? It's that I can still do it as me and think about what tiny tweaks I can make to make it more connective to the people that I'm talking to. So the second concept that I want to talk about today is self-orientation. Now, we teach this concept in our personal branding class, our digital branding class. We teach it in our interviewing class and our job search class because it is so foundational to how we show up with charisma. Now, if you're like me, you might think that charisma is something you're either born with or not. But what I've found out is that that's actually not true. And although some people might come by it more naturally, or they may have a better command of a room when they walk in, true charisma sticks after you go. And here's the secret to it, that you are deeply interested and show that interest in the people that you're talking about, or talking to, not about, talking to. So one of my mentors, Dr. Rich Feller, he nails this every time. And Rich is, he's a great guy. He's been around in the career services space for a long time, but he's not your stereotypical CEO, right? I don't know that he would have naturally had that command of a room, but he has learned how to master this skill of charisma. And yes, I'm going to say that charisma is a skill. Here's what he does. When you are talking to him, you feel like you are the only person in the room that he's worried about. And we all have times, and I've seen them for him as well, where you've got too much going on, or there's all these other people, trying to get your attention. But for the most part, when you talk to him, it feels like his focus is completely on you. And this is that idea of self-orientation. And it's hard when we're in job search and when we're interviewing to think this way, because we think the interview is about us and telling our stories and telling how great we are. But it's really not. It's about the connection. And so if I walk into that room with this kind of self-orientation, I'm going to knock people out of their chairs. And this is the problem. It's not about me. So I say self-orientation, which you might think is me being about me, but it's actually the opposite. So self-orientation means that when I come into a conversation, my main goal is to figure out, what do you need? What's working for you? What's going on in this situation? It's that curiosity around the other person or the other people. And that genuine curiosity that you bring with a pretty soul focus on the other person is magnetic. And when you think back about people that you just enjoy being with, you'll probably see that there is that thread. Now, there's also a part of it where you have to share and connect and be a part of the conversation. It's not like you can just ask questions. You have to also be ready to share and engage and share things that are relevant to the other person. And when it really sparks, it's this feeling that other person has a genuine concern for you, has a genuine care about what's going on for you. And shouldn't our interviewers automatically have that, right? They want to learn about the company. They want to learn the people that they're going to be working with. But what happens is they get very anxious about, what am I going to say? How am I going to show up? How am I going to perform? And we forget that it's really not about that. It's about seeing if this other person is someone I'd like to work with. And when we go in with that focus and that genuine curiosity and concern for others, it just flips everything around. And I encourage you to think about this when you go to a networking event, or even when you post on social media. Like I said, we have this concept in our social media class, because when you post for the purpose of helping others, it brings a whole different lens to what you're doing, why you're doing it, all of those things. And we genuinely think, of course, that we can help others, which is good. And then we show up with that intention, with that purpose. And when you're interviewing for a role, I'd encourage you to think about the same thing. You're not there to strut your stuff. Yes, you want to be prepared. You want to have your answers. You want to be able to genuinely share the value that you bring. But when you show up in that interview, it's really about creating a connection and learning about the other people. And when you do that, no matter how introverted you are or extroverted, charisma is not about that. It's that intention that you have to connect with the other person on the other side of the screen. So thinking about how you do that in the work that you do every day, whether it's in your business and selling your services, showing up on social media, obviously in your prospect calls with other people, when you can show up with that focus and that self-orientation, you really put other people at ease. And many of us as coaches and counselors, we're already good at this already. That's what helps us build rapport very quickly. We've got to make sure that we are also ready to communicate about ourselves when it's time. But it's that genuine focus on the other person that will create a lasting them stand out from others, help you stand out from the other coaches that people might be talking about or talking to, so that you can make a difference and in that connection and in their long-term work with other people. Preparing also for our certified interview and compensation negotiation coach. I just did my live stream yesterday, my radio show, on the kind of this process of interview preparation and how we want to think about presence. And it just gets me thinking about the salary negotiation piece of it, that everybody wants to talk about salary negotiation, but they don't really want to talk about the part that gets you there. You can't negotiate salary if you aren't prepared. You can't negotiate salary if you don't make a connection, right? So we want to skip to that step, but all these other pieces are so important, because if you don't have the wow, if you don't have the connection, you don't have any leverage to negotiate the salary once you get the offer, or you might not even get the offer. So we want to help people pay attention to the whole process, the preparation, the presence, and then I call it the profit, which is the end piece where you're closing, you're stating your interest, you're asking for the job, and then you're getting your follow-up pieces nailed down so that you can negotiate the salary when you have the offer as well. So those pieces are critical, and that's part of what it's all of what the certified interview and compensation coach program covers. In 6 weeks, we go in depth into those 3 areas. We spend, I don't know, about a week and a half, so about 2 hours, talking specifically about compensation negotiation. And then, as I said, we got about 4 classes with all of the pieces leading up to that. We're going to be talking more and more about how we can use AI to prep prep for interviews a little bit deeper than you might see in just the little cute tip sheets that go out for interview prompts, where we start very deep and then use that in terms of how we go. And also the human piece of it that can't do. The presence, preparing for that, giving people feedback, and really being ready to have those conversations with our clients. So I know many of you have already taken the program. We're excited. Yes, getting that connection is particularly important when it's virtual. And those same things that we were talking about all apply virtually. You will need to be a little bit more thoughtful, intentional about them, because when we are doing it virtually, then it's harder if we're not practiced. So if we're trying to do it on the fly, or if we're If we aren't really prepared, if we're too busy looking at our notes, like I understand there's a piece of looking at our notes that is important, but if we're not really there, that can be a challenge. So that virtual piece, that intention, that energy, that connection is even more important. I agree. Thank you for sharing that. And I was just finding the right link, sorry. But the link to join us for our certified interview and compensation negotiation coach. If you have any questions on that, let me know. We actually do have a Q&A session coming up later this week on Thursday. You can find that Q&A session on our calendars, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about any of our programs or memberships, but especially that one, because this starts on Tuesday, May 7th, so a week from today. We'll be starting this compensation negotiation and interview prep class. I'm excited. Just, we have one more week. We're going to be talking about interviewing next week too, but I'm going to talk specifically about salary and compensation negotiation next week on this live stream. So let me know what questions you have. What do you want to know about salary negotiation? Be happy to answer that. I say compensation negotiation, even though it's a little bit of a tongue twister, because it's really so much more than salary that people can negotiate. So we will see you right back here again next week. The now, the new, and the next in careers. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe so you get notified when we go live every Tuesday and when we post our follow-up videos. We'll see you all next Tuesday. Thank you, everyone.